What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show, part 2 of tonight's show. This isn't just any other night. This is the 300th edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, part 2 tonight. And not only is it the 300th show, but it is the debut of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast on Grandstand Sports Network. Very excited to join this network. They've done a fantastic job at promoting many podcasts throughout the country. Podcasts that are recorded each and every day on Spreaker.com. Very excited to see where this goes as far as promoting the podcast. And hopefully, I know it will help me reach a new audience. And that's the best part of having this podcast. The best part is being able to communicate with people that you never thought you would know. Without the podcast, I wouldn't know certain people that I talk to on a daily basis. So it's been a real fun ride, and I'm very excited to, basically continue to create content for the listeners and viewers of the show and continue to create. So here I am back again. It is January, what day is it today? What is the date? January 23rd. Holy Moses. Man, this month is going by fast. This year is going by fast. It's only 3 weeks and 2 days in. What is next for the winners and losers at UFC 220? UFC 220 took place this past Saturday. Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou for the heavyweight title. The co-main event was Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Ozdemir. And Miocic, the champion at heavyweight, and DC Daniel Cormier, the champion at light heavyweight, were both victorious in their bouts. Both defended their titles successfully. What is my take on what could be next? Who should be next? Who should be the next opponent for Stipe and DC? Now, I want to squash this right now, right here, right now. The idea that UFC President Dana White has thrown around is not one that I like whatsoever, and that is a crossover champion versus champion fight pitting Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champ, versus Daniel Cormier, the light heavyweight champ. I don't like that idea at all, mainly because John Jones is lurking in the shadows. We don't know what's going on with him, and Stipe Miocic still has some fish to fry at heavyweight. Although he has defended his title 3 times, there is one man that he should fight. There is one man that's out there that is coming off some injuries, but nonetheless a former UFC heavyweight champion that deserves a title shot. And I know he's coming off a win off of Travis Brown back at UFC 200, but Cain Velasquez is the second best UFC heavyweight of all time, next to Stipe Miocic. You want to go big? You want to do a big UFC title fight for Stipe? That's it. Stipe Miocic versus Cain Velasquez. You have 2 Division I wrestlers in Stipe and Cain. You have 2 guys that can knock each other out in Stipe and Cain. Their skill sets are very, very similar. That's the fight that I want to see. I'm tired of these champion versus champion fights. Dana White wants a champion versus champion fight virtually in almost every weight class. There's too much of them. The prospects of Cyborg fighting Amanda Nunes for the women's featherweight title. Amanda Nunes moving up in weight to take on Cyborg. I kind of am more open to that because bantamweight there's not many challengers for, and at featherweight, the UFC's featherweight division for the women's featherweights is very sparse. So I get that. I get the Mighty Mouse versus TJ Dillashaw champion versus champion fight. I understand it. That's a fight that should be made. That fight needs to happen. Because Demetrius Johnson has won and won and won and won, and TJ Dillashaw's only loss was to Dominic Cruz, and it was a close fight. Fight I thought he lost, but you ask 10 people, it's the 5 versus 5. But Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier does not make much sense to me. Daniel Cormier has a rematch in waiting for him, and that is versus Alexander Gustafsson. I think Alexander Gustafsson should get the next title shot at light heavyweight. He was supposed to get the next title shot at light heavyweight, but he had a tough shoulder injury, and that obviously opened the door for Volkan Ozdemir. What helped Ozdemir's chances at getting a title shot as well, in my opinion, is the fact that DC versus Jones 2 took place at UFC 214 in July. Underneath that fight was Volkan Ozdemir versus Jimmy Manuwa. Jimmy Manuwa was knocking guys out left and right. He's a heavy-handed fighter. Volkan Ozdemir knocked out Jimmy Manuwa the same night that DC lost his title to John Jones. So they were both in the same timeline. You always, in the fight game and in fight promotion, you always want to keep, the guys that are in the same timeline together. That way they have a better chance of fighting each other. And they were on the same timeline. So that fight made sense. Gustafson's out, Volkan's in. And we saw what happened. We saw what happened with Volkan. Volkan needs some experience. Volkan needs to fight a guy with experience in order to get back into the title hunt. So in terms of the winners, I have Stipe slotted against Cain Velasquez. I have Daniel Cormier slotted against Alexander Gustafsson. In terms of the losers, both Francis Ngannou and Volkan Ozdemir need to fight someone with experience. Someone that's a name. Someone that could put them right back in title contention. Both Ozdemir and Ngannou are young, fresh faces in the sport, and the only way for them to get back into title contention is if they rattle off another big win versus a top contender. Francis Ngannou, the guy that I really think that he should fight next, would be Fabricio Verdum. Verdum states that he feels as if he's worthy of the title shot. I disagree. I think Cain Velasquez is worthy of the title shot, regardless of Cain's inactivity, regardless of the fact that Verdum beat Cain. Cain was slotted to fight Verdum for the title and got hurt. I think his number one contender card should be alive and well, regardless of the inactivity. Miocic knocked out Verdum. Verdum lost his title to Miocic, so there should be a little bit more of a ladder for Verdum to climb. Plus, he fought a late notice fight, a late notice opponent, and beat him, and the guy was not even in the top 10. So it's very tough to give that win much clout for Verdum. Francis Ngannou, it would be a great opportunity for him to fight Fabricio Verdum because it would, as I said, would give him an opportunity to get right back in the title picture with a big win over a former champ, one of the all-time greats in Fabricio Verdum. Dates back to the Pride days, dates back to the Strikeforce days. He dates back. Former UFC champion, former Strikeforce champion. He's done it all. And for Ngannou to get a win under his belt versus Verdum, to knock out Fabricio Verdum, that would put him right back in title contention. So there's that fight. In terms of Volkan Ozdemir, and I want to talk about the DC Ozdemir fight for just a second. When I looked at this fight prior to the fight taking place, I wasn't that excited for it. I thought, this is kind of boring. This is kind of, I'm not really, Ozdemir is not really well known. I know him just because I'm a really hardcore fan. But to the casuals, they don't really know who Volkan Ozdemir is. It's a tough sell. DC isn't really the champ. He lost to John Jones, but the UFC did what was right. The Athletic Commission did what was right in giving DC the belt, ruling DC versus Jones to a no contest. That's what's supposed to happen in a title fight. When one opponent is not playing on a level playing field, and that said opponent wins that title fight via knockout, and then it comes to, be found out later on that he was on something, whether he meant to take it or not, he was on something, that's a no contest. The champion going into that fight should get his belt back, and that's what happened with DC, and that's what deserved to happen for DC. But still, I had a very tough time telling myself that this was a title fight. More power to DC for winning this fight, but Ozdemir, early in the fight, a couple minutes in, was looking pretty good. I thought, wow, he's really impressing me. He's really showing me something here. And he's showing me that he's a legit fighter. Albeit he's only been in the UFC for a year. But he really showed up. And he lost in the second round. He almost got finished in the first round. But he was ready. He didn't think the moment was too big for him. And I respect that. Even in a losing effort, he was very classy about it. He was very dignified in his performance, although it was a finish, for DC, and ultimately he was finished in a crucifix, which is one of the more embarrassing positions that you could ever be put in. At one point in my wrestling quote-unquote career, although it was very short, I was in a crucifix position, and I didn't know how to get out of it. All I remember hearing is my assistant coach at the time, longtime wrestling coach, Mr. Seidel, telling me to move my feet and run. And I'm like, run? I'm on my back. He meant basically move your feet, kick your feet as if you're spinning, running the other way. And as I moved the other way, the opponent that I was wrestling moved the other way as well, but I was actually able to loosen it and eventually get out of it. I don't even remember if I won that match or not, but I just remember that and thinking, is Ozdemir moving his hips? Is he turning? Is he... And really, I mean, there was nothing he can do against an Olympic caliber wrestler like Daniel Cormier. When you're stuck in that position, you're pretty much shot. You're screwed. You are screwed. So I was very impressed, though. Although it was a finish, to come away impressed with Volkan Ozdemir, although he was in a crucifix, I was actually impressed with the kid. He's only been in the UFC for a year. His biggest opponent was the last one that he fought, Jimmy Manuwa, who he knocked out. And there were moments in the fight where Ozdemir was landing punches, hard punches. And Daniel Cormier even said after the fight that was as hard as he had ever been hit. So I thought it was really great. I really did. I thought his performance was actually a lot better than I thought it would be, and he still got finished. So there's obviously work to be done. The opponent that I think makes the most sense for him would be somebody that's a big name, somebody that might be a little bit long in the tooth, but somebody that thinks he can get right back into contention as well in his own right. That'd be Shogun Rua. Shogun Rua has been around for a long time, much similar to Fabricio Verdum in the case of Ngannou. I'm picking these two guys, Verdum and Rua, because they are two fighters that have been around a long time that could be springboards for young fighters like Ngannou and Ozdemir. But nonetheless, I mean, you had to feel for both guys. You had to feel for Ozdemir. You had to feel for Ngannou because, Ngannou was largely hyped up by the UFC. Volkan did some things right in that fight, and it still wasn't enough. The champs came out. Miocic and Cormier came ready. They really did, and it was great to see that. It was great to see titles actually get defended, albeit, DC's was given back to him, handed back to him. He felt like he was fighting for a vacant title. He did a hell of a lot to win over a lot of fans. And you know what? People say, well, he wouldn't have the career that he had if it wasn't for John Jones messing up. Hey, John Jones messes up. That's what's important, and DC does not. DC represents the company the way that he's supposed to. DC does what he needs to do. He shows up, he creates attention, and does his thing on FS1, and he also does his thing in the Octagon. And he's easily the second best light heavyweight of all time. And I hate to say that he's the second best, but he's got 2 losses on his record, or 1 loss and 1 quote-unquote no contest on his record, that say he's the second best. Until somebody beats John Jones, I really thought Alexander Gustafsson did. But until someone actually beats John Jones, I can't rank him, I can't rank DC ahead of him. I just can't do it. So that's what you can come to expect from me. I mean, I am a Swiss Army knife of sports in terms of this sports podcast. NFL, MLB, NHL, MMA, boxing, combat sports is what I like to call it. I really enjoy this podcast. It's been a great time, and I'm very happy that it is on an awesome network, Grandstand Sports Network, where they've done a fantastic job at growing podcasts, and I'm very excited to reach out to a new audience. I'm Ryan Thomas, in case you don't know, from One Buffalo, New York, signing off. I will be right back. We'll be talking some more MMA. Got a question. Is Rory McDonald, the new Bellator welterweight champion, the best welterweight in mixed martial arts today? My thoughts on that and much, much more. This is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. See you soon. We'll be right back.